in the meantime. When we come back, we're going to switch into Warwick. I'm told that there's some interesting stuff going on there that I have no time to preview, but I shall when we come back on the Dan Yorke Show. Stay with us.
This is the show of record, the Dan Yorke Show, on the voice of Southern New England, News Talk 99.7 FM and AM 630 WPRO.
We don't get fooled again.
All righty, so there's been a lot of stress in the fair city of Warwick about its financial condition. And there's been, a lot of activity, some unofficial, trying to figure out what the best course is. That's what this conversation's about.
They're not just going to throw money on without knowing where it's going, without knowing that it's going to be spent in those areas, and that your resources, knowing what your actual needs are.
Is it difficult, Dan, when frauds are committed, when people say things that aren't true, when they sign agreements that you don't know about? It makes it difficult.
All righty, welcome in the Dan Yorke Show, weekdays 3 till 6. Coming up at 5:30, Dan McGowan from now the Boston Globe, who writes on Providence and education, will join us to explain his early read of this John Hopkins study on the education system in Providence. It has a lot of people in the mover shaker world titillated. And I'm hearing that it's not great stuff. I don't think that's a violation of any kind of embargo to suggest that. I mean, duh. But I'm sure it's going to be the cause of a lot of conversation over the next handful of days, weeks, months, and maybe even years to come with the new education commissioner. She'll be in studio at 3 o'clock on Thursday to talk about that with us. In the meantime, those voices are the mayor and city council president in Warwick, just kind of random flavoring in, kind of sprinkling in a little salt on this conversation so you are reminded what we're talking about. I got a note from Mr. Robert Cushman, former school committeeman and city councilor, that there's a big thing happening this week in Warwick regarding the financial system and the people's understanding of it in the city. Let's go to the Newsmaker line and grab Bob, who I think has been clear and very articulate about the current and former and omnipresent issues facing the city of Warwick's finances. Bob, welcome in on the Newsmaker line. Appreciate it.
Hi, Dan.
Hi.
How you doing?
Good. So you got something going on Thursday of this week. Tell me what's happening.
Yeah, so Jay Giovanni has set up a Warwick Finance Crisis Committee. So what he's trying to do is rally.
You broke up. Who did? I'm sorry?
Jay Giovanni. I hope I said his name right.
Yeah.
So he's been trying to set up. He's been doing a great job of getting people together, and he's calling it the Warwick Financial Crisis Committee. And he's trying to galvanize people together to start, looking at the issues and start becoming more involved. And I've done a presentation in front of the committee, and he set up a meeting on this Thursday at the Warwick Public Library on Sandy Lane, and they have a special speaker coming in, a former Supreme Court Justice Bob Flanders, and he's going to talk about, I think, some of the issues regarding the Fiscal Stability Act and maybe where some of those remedies could be applied to the Warwick situation. So I think it's going to be an interesting meeting. I would advise, students and parents and people that are, looking at the sports being eliminated and all the different problems and the finger pointing going on in the city, to come to the meeting, listen to what the judge has to say, and have an opportunity to ask him some questions.
Well, yeah, I mean, Judge Flanders took Central Falls through this process, and it was painful. It was painful. But they came out whole. There's no political will. Well, check that. There's no political admission amongst those who are elected in the city right now to even entertain the concept that Mr. Flanders will be talking about. Right?
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I got to say one thing. Maybe the parents need to take it from the kids' playbook and we got to storm City Hall, and you get a meeting within an hour with the mayor. And I think this, Dan, we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars in unfunded liabilities in Warwick. We're talking about, do we want to be facing situations like this every single year for the next 5, 10 years or whatever? Or is there a chance that we can actually fix this once and for all? But we got people looking at $600, $700, $800 in tax increases within the middle class neighborhoods who own homes within the $200,000 to $300,000 value mark because the assessments have gone through the roof. They're going to get killed. And the question is, do we want to take the one-time big hit? And maybe there's going to be some pain associated with increased taxes, but at least fix the problem once and for all, or are we going to go through this year after year after year with tax increases, with diminished services, with the finger pointing between the city council and the school department, and nobody wants to get together, and everybody is doing their own thing? And I think people really need to realize maybe there is a solution to this problem, and if the powers to be don't want to think about that, then maybe there needs to be some new powers to be, What's
happened? Give me your objective spectator analysis here. What has happened since last week's fury over, the school budget, the kids, protesting athletics being cut, the mayor doing what I thought was like a really creepy thing, and that was to sell to the kids the idea that they could walk out knowing that their athletic funds or their athletic activities were intact. I mean, that was really kind of weird.
I don't know.
He has a weird Santa Claus concept or something like that. That's, it's kind of, okay, kids, sit on my lap and let me tell you how I'm going to fix this. I mean, it's just gross.
Yeah. Nobody can tell the school department really how to spend their money. So, what they're basically saying is, the school sponsor is a real galvanizing issue. But, they have other, educational issues that they want some funding for, too. And so, basically right now, I think people are talking above each other. They're not talking at each other. So, you got these one-ups. And, we had the city council meeting where, the city council passed a no confidence vote in the finance director for the school department, which was a ridiculous thing to do because, basically everything that they're accusing him to do, which, they're doing, some of the same things. So it's not like anybody wants to solve the long-term problem, so they're using the kids as political pawns again. And, I originally, reached out to you about an idea, a decade and a half ago that maybe for once and for all, solve the problem with the school sports and make it self-sufficient. But, the fact of the matter is,
remind me what that idea was.
Well, so that was, when I was on the school department in 2005, I sent out and we agreed to have an RFP to get school bus advertising on the school buses. We didn't own the school buses at the time.
I remember that.
But we could put a little ad on the school bus, and then, basically they came in to get an RFP. The buses were owned by another private bus company, but they said, hey, look, as long as we don't maintain it, we don't have to do it. And this company came in basically and said they could get $250,000 to $300,000. Now, this is back in 2005. And I sent this proposal to the school committee people, the city council people. And, the fact of the matter is that if you expanded it to the ball fields and the scoreboards and everything else, Dan, I really think in this day and age, you probably could raise over $1 million a year.
Without a doubt.
Without a doubt. Let's get rid of the politics and putting these kids through hell, where every year this is going to be coming up again and again and again.
But here's the thing on your idea. So, by the way, I don't remember. You reminded me of some of the good old days. But I remember when you came up with that. I couldn't remember if I accused you of stealing my idea or whether I stole your idea. But I've long talked about the idea that at some juncture we're going to have to start naming rights for public facilities like libraries and all sorts of things because of the financial pressures that we're on. It's so funny. I haven't talked about it in nearly a decade. But I do actually remember, but it's bringing me back, to a day when I remember you and I having this conversation. Yeah. And I think that is still a really viable idea. I think it has to be written, and this makes me laugh, and it'll make you laugh too, because these things are promised and never delivered. They have to be restricted accounts. The money's got to be raised for the expressed objective it's being raised for. rather than just dumping another $500,000 to $1 million in naming and advertising rights into the general coffers of, say, the city of Warwick, only to have it redistributed into oblivion anyway.
Yeah, we don't want a lottery fund that's going to be for education 25 years ago, and now what? It goes to the general fund. You're absolutely right about that.
Right. Right.
But Dan, here's the thing. I mean, if you think about it, the objection back then was that, well, we don't want the kids to be, focused on advertising or objected to this thing. And it's an absolutely ridiculous argument now. You know what I mean? I mean, the kids are walking advertisements with their Nike sneakers, and I'm sending my age now. I don't even know what the new thing is, all the different things that they're wearing and
I have no idea.
But there's no reason not to do this. The things, this company actually came in, and I sent out the actual proposal to everybody. They were going to set up a committee within the district that would look at the content. So it's not going to be, it's going to be content-based ads that are appropriate for, those kids or whatever. So I think they had the dotted their I's, crossed their T's. This company's still in existence. They're out of Scottsdale, Arizona, and I would just hopefully like to see someone come in and, people talk about thinking outside the box. Well, this is thinking outside the box. Let's stop using the kids as pawns. Let's get them out so they can concentrate on, the sporting activities. And it's not only that, Dan, too. They're cutting after school activities, too. The drama clubs and everything else. So let's get that off the table, and then let's get the adults in a room and try to fix the problem,
Well, what you don't have is, we're talking about Bob Cushman, former school committee member and city council member. He's telling us that there's a financial get-together. This is called the Warwick Financial Crisis Committee, and at the library on Thursday, former Supreme Court Justice Bob Flanders, former receiver for Central Falls, Bob Flanders, same guy who ran for U.S. Senate against Sheldon Whitehouse, is going to make a presentation, mostly, I guess, on the notes he accumulated from the Central Falls exercise to talk about how it would apply to Warwick. I'll tell you, if that rumbling begins to have a ripple effect in the city of Warwick, it may impact the politics of the city of Warwick, because right now the mayor is not even using the B or R words. He doesn't want to hear about any of that kind of stuff. Yet he wants to make these kind of half-lucid promises to the students regarding sports, when in fact it is the school committee's complete discretion on how they're going to fund those line items. What's really kind of necessary, though, Bob, I think, is in order to be able to get a couple things done, somebody's got to be a mediator to bring these parties together to say, listen, I'm not talking about formal mediation. I'm talking about knocking heads, over a couple of beers and a pizza, and say, look, are we prepared to make the commitment that the mayor has irresponsibly made, and that is that we're going to find a way to put the sports thing back into shape. The school committee doesn't feel that way. The chairman Backus there was livid with the mayor, suggesting that he put sports ahead of certain curriculum that is also being cut in the middle of this whole crisis, that is $7 million worth of value to the schools, meaning they're short. They say they're short that dough. You've got to have that consensus in order to be able to accomplish that goal. And I don't see that happening. I'll tell you, the kids and parents are in Warwick are walking around here with this notion that this thing is, wink, wink, going to be resolved. And it is not true.
No, Dan, you know what? The thing is, this school committee got their shorts handed to them last time in the last mediation session. And, they came out with, raiding the pension fund to fill a $4 million budget gap. So, and then you got a no confidence vote by the school committee, the city council last week. Dan, it was ridiculous, the stuff that you were hearing from these people. And then you want to get these people in a room again. So what? You could beat the pulp out of them again? So, there's no trust at all going on. I think the city council is trying to hide all their blemishes. They're so bad at doing things, they could, make the Wicked Witch of the West look like Snow White with how they hide things. You know what I mean? So people do not want to solve the problems in the city right now, and I think the viability of receivership needs to be put on the table. And if we can't get the people, the elected officials, to even think about doing something like that, maybe we need some new people in office. Because Dan, I looked at this is a perfect example. You've seen all the charts and graphs I've done with you. I looked at the new spending in the city budget since 2004. Dan, 44% of the new tax dollars in the city is going towards retiree costs, 42% for active. We're actually spending more new money on retired people than active people.
Let me ask you this:
so
how many people will show up at this meeting Thursday? Do you think?
Last time we had 100 people, which was great. I'm hoping we could get the kids and the parents and everybody else and galvanize them and just listen to an expert who's put a municipality through the system and look at how is that municipality working right now, and maybe let people really realize, do you want something resolved once and for all, or are we going to be going through this year after year after year?
All right. Well, that's a great way to punctuate it, Bob. Thank you very much, Bob Cushman, former city councilor and school committee member. Can I ask that question of you at 438-9776, especially if you live in Warwick? Do you understand what he's talking about here? I can't imagine, a bunch of 17-year-old kids sitting through a presentation by Bob Flanders on how he took Central Falls into the receivership toilet. But I can tell you, or the ringer, I should probably say, versus the toilet. Some would say it is the toilet. I would say it's the ringer. I'm having an argument with myself. I sound like Lou Reptakis, for heaven's sake. But that's the kind of mental work that's going to be required. So let me say the word receivership. It's another fancy word for a form of bankruptcy in the city of Warwick. Any appetite at all? Because I got to tell you, man, I don't know how you can't. 438-9776, you're first when we come back. Right now, let's check traffic, 422.
Last time we had 100 people, which was great. I'm hoping we could get the kids and the parents and everybody else and galvanize them and just listen to an expert who's put a municipality through the system. Do you want something resolved once and for all, or are we going to be going through this year after year after year?
427, former school committee and city councilor in Warwick, Bob Cushman, who's alerting us to a meeting this Friday at the library in the city of Warwick. A presentation going to be done by Bob Flanders, former receiver at Central Falls, meaning he's the guy that ran the bankruptcy. Former state Supreme Court justice, former candidate for Senate. Sharp guy, man. Smart lawyer. There's a thing called the Warwick Financial Crisis Committee that's developed. Is anybody in Warwick open to the idea that this is perhaps the thing that needs to be done? At least open to it? Matt in Warwick, you're on WPRO at 438 WPRO. Hello.
Hey, Dan, how are you?
Okay.
So I got a question. With the receivership, would that mean that all the collective bargaining agreements and everything become null and void?
Yep.
And you have to kind of open everything back up and you have to renegotiate?
Yep.
Okay. So that certainly kind of sets things up for a clean slate, and you kind of look at your financial situation, long-term liabilities, what the current revenues are going to be, and you can kind of put the pieces back together that are going to be more sustainable.
Well, right now in the state of Rhode Island, there are phases to this kind of process. The city council and the government itself has got to kind of take ownership of it, and there are phases of it. But eventually, the full receivership is definitely a null and void on public employee contracts, and pension agreements, and that's because the unfunded liabilities are so significant, and because the percentage of current revenues supplies so much retiree services that's a big place right there. It's a big place. But
my current situation, I have a young daughter. She's 6 months old, so I live in Warwick. My kid's going to be going through that school system. And if going through receivership now is going to create a better environment for her in the future, I'm open to it.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a responsible point of view, Matt. Thank you. Not easy to say. You almost have to change your name to say it, right? Vince, you're on WPRO. Hello.
Hi, Dan. How are you this afternoon?
Very well, thank you.
I agree with your previous caller also. I think that the inevitable is a receivership, because there's too many people that have too many vested interests in willing to at least look at what the problems are. That would mean cutting overhead, like cutting jobs, and teachers union going backwards against their pay increase. There's so much of that's been going on for so long. I don't see how they can get around it. And I think the taxpayers in the city of Warwick, they're going to be facing. I heard a gentleman this morning saying that it could be a minimum of $850 to $1,000 increase in their taxes. So people on fixed incomes I mean, that's going to be devastating to them. So, I mean, they have to. The city of Warwick now, the taxpayers have to pay for the sins of the past and what is going on. And I don't see how they can get around it. And if they do try and it's prolonging the inevitable.
All right, Vince, thank you. I think a lot of studies got to be done, and it's a process to get there. But, you know, the first two people who have piped in on this are open to the concept. So Bob Flanders is going to talk to the people of Warwick on Thursday in a non-government sanctioned event at the public library. And I think a lot of people ought to show up, if only to understand what the exercise is all about. In the meantime, you got kids running around in the city of Warwick who think that they're okay athletically, but they probably all have this really squeamish feeling in their bellies because the guy who told them they'd be okay didn't have any real answers on how he's going to do it. And that would be the mayor.
Talk to me on WPRO. Everybody.
This is the show of record, The Dan Yorke Show, on News Talk 99.7 FM and AM 630 WPRO.
I really think in this day and age, you probably could raise over $1 million a year.
Without a doubt.
Once and for all,
Without a doubt.
Let's get rid of the politics and putting these kids through hell, where every year this is going to be coming up again and again and again. You know, last time we had 100 people, which was great. I'm hoping we could get the kids and the parents and everybody else and galvanize them and just listen to an expert who's put a municipality through the system. Do you want something resolved once and for all, or are we going to be going through this year after year after year?
438-WPRO, toll-free 1-800-321-WPRO. Email me at dan@630WPRO.com. Bob Cushman, school committeeman and city councilor from back in the day, years ago, over a decade ago, but still an active citizen and part of this Warwick Financial Crisis Committee that, well, at least he spoke to it. I guess there's another guy, Jay Bongiovanni or somebody. So Jay can always dial us and tell us what he's up to. But they have a meeting this week, Thursday, 2 nights from now. Today's Tuesday, right? Whenever I have was I off yesterday? No, I was off TV yesterday. All I have to do is change my dynamics in any way, shape, or form, and the week starts to wobble on me. Sorry. Thursday at 6:30 at the City Hall, at the City Library in Warwick. I guess I might have said Friday. Cushman doesn't. He doesn't get away with nothing. He just texted me, Thursday, not Friday. Oh, sorry. Thursday, 6:30, City Library. Meeting. Warwick Financial Crisis Committee. One would think, well, that's a little dastardly. That's a little dark. Meaning the name. Speaks to it, though, doesn't it? Because you got one. Bob Flanders, the former Supreme Court Justice and, more importantly, receiver in Central Falls, is going to make a presentation on what that's all about. And, there's a process by which towns can call themselves bankrupt. There's really never a full bankruptcy in play. Receivership is a little bit different. And you can check the legislation on the phases that there's a whole, there's a committee and all sorts of things that happen from the state side. But push comes to shove when you're in full throttle, Warp 5 receivership, you got somebody in there who's managing and slashing and creating all sorts of restructure, and it is painful. It is something nobody wants to go through, but somewhere along the line, the elected officials at work better start recognizing that this is a conversation that the people deserve to have. Gina Warwick, you're on WPRO. Good afternoon.
Thank you, Mr. Yorke. I'm a retired vice chairman of the Warwick School Committee. And I certainly agree with Bob's consideration of perhaps receivership for the city. I don't see any other way out. Our total debt in Warwick is over $1 billion. And the fact that the schools have not been financed correctly, and it just shouldn't be. The city council has got to take action, real strong action, to stop this tax situation that we had. I listened to your commercial when I was waiting for you on Optima, who stops taxes and gives tax relief. Maybe we ought to hire them for the city of Warwick to get our taxes down. I know I'm facing a large tax increase here in Ward 1 in Warwick, and that'll wipe out whatever grant I get now from war veteran for the war in North Korea, and that'll wipe it out. But we're going to a point where it's not fair to the taxpayers and especially to our children, our school children. Shouldn't have to go through this of cutting that, when the city council has been extending the fiscal audit for the city that should have been done by last December 31, 2018, and they just got a fourth extension for the audit, and here they are raising taxes before that they have that information from the city. And they had the unmitigated gall to call for the firing of the Anthony Ferrucci, the financial officer of the Warwick School Department, who's one of the most talented individuals and administrators to ever be hired here in the city of Warwick for whatever the situation. That's what they're doing there at the City Hall. And they do not deserve credit for what they're trying to do. And I know them, and I respect some of them, but we're reaching a point where it's just the fairness is not here anymore.
Yeah,
so that's why I wanted to call.
Yeah, there needs to be some kind of emerging hero leader in this environment, and there just isn't any. And unfortunately, the mayor, and of course, listen, the former mayor is just as culpable of putting the city in the jam that he's in, and Scott Avedisian doesn't want to take any responsibility for that. He just wants to be off into his rip to sunset, and it's too bad. He's a good guy, but he's not taking ownership of this. And this current mayor is just, first of all, he has trouble putting a full paragraph together, number one, and number two, that thing that he put together, that thing he did with the kids last week was disgusting.
Was beyond the pale.
Beyond. You can't make those assertions to those kids. Yeah. It's like a drug dealer on the street saying, "Hey, come on over here. I got some candy for you." I mean, it's outrageous.
Yeah, the city has no right to tell the school department how to handle the money situation that they have. He cannot tell those students that sports were going to be covered because he's got the $1.3 million from somewhere out of the $4 million that we desperately need for this year's budget. Never mind next year's budget.
Yeah, well, listen, Gene, obviously you're very informed, and keep in touch with me. Thank you. 438-WPRO, toll-free 1-800-321-WPRO. Email me at dan@630wpro.com. By the way, we'll be kicking it with Keno and the Rhode Island Lottery at End Zone Pub and Grill in East Greenwich tomorrow. Join Gresh as he broadcasts live from 6 to 9. Play some Keno and win great prizes from WPRO and the Rhode Island Lottery. Your Rhode Island Lottery has your game. Please play responsibly. Boy, Gresh is on the road a lot these days. Al in North Providence, you're on WPRO. Hello.
Hi, Dan. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
This last caller kind of hit it on the head, and I'm sure he's more educated about what's happening in Warwick than I am. But it is, I mean, in this day and age, no sports, no music, no programs for these kids. Why are they going to school? They're missing a whole bunch of good stuff that you had and probably I had too. And I'm glad Judge Flanders is getting in there. It should have happened a long time ago.
Well, Judge Flanders is not getting. Judge Flanders isn't getting in anywhere. All he's doing is making a presentation to a bunch of people who want to hear him in a library. There's no official sanction to any of this.
Well, that's what I meant. At least that's an opening.
Yeah,
he's going to educate people about something.
Sure,
but if there's not a grand jury called about this Avedisian and his whole administration from day one, subpoenaed, give them immunity, give anybody what they need to testify so they can rat out who I believe is mostly responsible for this fiasco in Warwick. He knew what was going on. He was probably at the center of it. And now he's got this cushy job, and people just let these politicians slide to be politically incorrect. And yes, he's a good guy, and he's this, and he's that. He's not a good guy, because this wouldn't be happening if he was a good guy. And I think that is what needs to be done.
Listen. I mean, the good guy is is relative to the context that it's offered. He's always been a pleasant guy. Everybody believes that. I don't think he's dirty. I don't think he's, but there's a level of nonchalance. By the way, being a mayor for as long as the mayor was is a formula for disaster. By the way, it just, you can't, you don't come to the table with the same vigor.
No, you have to give your city away to get reelected.
Yeah, it's just,
we know that.
Yes, it's very hard to do that. So he was elected for
you're a gentleman for the way you put it.
Well, I'm just trying to, character assassination needs to be reserved for those who really deserve it. Al, thanks. And there's a difference between character assassination and job review. Scott obviously left a heaping mess in the city. And whatever the political ties that exist between the new mayor and the old mayor, they're somewhat severed right now because the old mayor has been dragged kicking and screaming to a place where he would speak even closely objectively to what's going on there. Yet he holds this notion that, a receivership plan is a mark on him and whatever he thinks his legacy in Warwick will be, reputation first, legacy to follow, right? All those things. And he's got a mishmash mind. He doesn't think clearly. You can hear him speak. He speaks in broken sentences. He has very difficult times responding to specific questions. He has this kind of ruffian, passive-aggressive thing combination going on that's really weird. And I'm telling you, I didn't wake up one morning and say, how could I rough up Joe Solomon every day? Just seeing what I see. What he did last week in that city is damn near, a version. It's the political version of DCYF investigative. It really is. Because what you're doing is you're screwing with the mindsets of 17-year-old kids who are barging down your door thinking they're having a moment of activism. And they walked out of there. Some kid literally walked into his office and demanded that the school sports be retained. They don't know the city charter. They don't know state law to know that a mayor is not somebody who can immediately order that. And that whatever resources the mayor may try to draw on the city side will only be partially, if at best, partially replaceable, and maybe not even authorized to conduct the kind of sports that the Rhode Island Interscholastic League wants because they work through the auspices of the schools. I mean, he was a fool to have done that. But there was this kind of like satiation that he was getting from the whole situation. Like, okay, these kids are now around me, and I'm going to be their Santa Claus hero, and I'm going to assert to them. And the kid looks her straight. Look at the journalistic accounts. The kid tells the story. I looked him straight in the eye and told you when I need to. I mean, she's literally like a new political leader. I got to walk out and talk to those kids out there. If I tell them that we got sports, I need to know that you can tell me that's going to happen. You got to be able to look me straight in the eye. And he was like, yeah. Go ahead and do that. That's insane. He doesn't have the statutory right to do that. Dude's a loose cannon, and he's half nuts. I've spoken to him twice now, and I realize that he may be a decent enough guy around town. A lot of people are decent enough guys around town to go have a beer or play around a golf with, but you don't want to give them the custody of a city. In a long time, management of the city council as well. Guess what? What do you think? You don't think there's a connection between the kind of financial devastation that the city of Warwick has and his stewardship of the city council? What do you think? All of a sudden he got dumb in the Warwick mayor's office? Now look, he may do okay as a lawyer and a used car salesman, which he is. And I don't. So this is what I'm doing is I'm demeaning him because he's wholly irresponsible, and the guy doesn't know. He doesn't know where boundaries are. You know how you deal with somebody who's completely socially unable to know where the boundaries are. He's politically unable to know where the boundaries are. I mean, he's a walking, talking disaster for that city, and he's saying I'm not even going to discuss the bankruptcy of the receivership thing because he's got some kind of Machiavellian problem going on with himself in terms of, how he looks himself in the mirror and whether or not this is, all about him. And if he was smart, he would have said in a campaign, look, we're in serious trouble. And on the block here is a potential move to receivership in the city of Warwick because the last guy didn't do a good job. But there were political gamesmanship going on and trying to soothe this and protect that. And the unions here and have adhesion there and whatever the muck of politics is. This guy has been swimming in it, can't see anything clearly, but certainly seized on the moment to tell a bunch of teenagers who are agitated that he could be their savior. That's disgusting. Something creepy weird about that. So that ought to be discussed in this library Thursday 6:30 event with Bob Flanders coming in. People need to know. That's bad, irresponsible. All right, end of speech. 4:52. All right, so make a note for